Hello and welcome to D&D Debate. My name is Jasper. Today I am joined with George.
Hello, I'm George. Jasper, what topic are we talking about today?
Today we'll be talking about are crime hobos justified? Crime hobos, of course, being a PC way of saying murder hobos. So George, what is your position on this topic?
My position on this topic is that crime hobos slash murder hobos are never good for a campaign, and I feel like should never be played.
Personally, or for the purpose of this video, I will be saying that I believe murder hobos are justified for two reasons. First is an argument relating to the DM. Second is one regarding player agency. I believe for these reasons, it is clear that murder hobos in some cases are both a valid response and an acceptable playstyle. Alright, so George, do you want to roll to see who goes first? Roll on it.
Obviously, I will be odds and you'll be evens.
As always. As the two videos.
It's odds.
It's odds.
And I think I want you to start.
Right, so my first point. So as mentioned, firstly, I would like to talk about DMs. With a regular party, one that is not inherently inclined towards killing, i.e. an evil party, murder hobos are the fault of the DM. Because they create a world where the players feel free to kill because they don't have engagement with that world. If a DM provides interesting NPCs that are colourful and fun, caricatures, that's why people enjoy D&D, because they get to interact with all these crazy lizard people with funny high-pitched voices, or tiny gnomes that kind of have a small man complex. These cool, interesting characters. But if the DM is creating like real people, like just straight up human NPCs who are all talking in the same kind of slow voice, all with the same kind of personality, then the player might just think, why should I spend 20 minutes trying to deal with this person when I could just kill them and steal the scroll or steal the, what's it called?
Understandable. I would rebuttal by saying...
Ooh, a rebuttal.
A DM, when making a world, whether it be a homebrew or straight from the books, it's not easy for a DM to come up with voices. Not every DM is a voice actor. They can't make every NPC a Gilmore or a Pumat Soul. And they can't be, subjected to do such things. And I feel like, yes, you will get those characters which are just, you grab onto them and go, oh, that's really fun. But maybe that's the point. Maybe you have those mundane characters so these other ones feel better. And because of this, murder hobos, get the wrong idea. They think, oh, I can just murder these other people. I can just go around killing everyone. But in reality, they're just missing out. I mean, we've had NPCs in my campaign that are like, solemn and depressed because in my world there's been a lot of negativity at this point. And a lot of people upset. If a murder hobo just comes in and just murders them, then that's a plot point that their party's never going to see.
In that case, it kind of depends, We've immediately gone from my first point, the first half of my first point, to the last half of my last point. But basically, if a DM is creating these kind of plot points, and if they are full-fledged quests and stuff like that, then it becomes a different thing. But generally, it links to a kind of lack of consequence of the world. If they do kill that NPC who has a tragic backstory and all these kind of things, and that would be quite an engaging, interesting thing. If they do kill him, they lose out on that. But if the DM contrives a way of finding that back into the story, the players don't have that kind of feedback for their actions, and so they're inclined to do it again and again, and that's kind of how murder hoboing snowballs.
We've played a session, and I feel like your first character, Rogue, Fluffles, was such a character. At least attempted to be at times.
Oh, poor Fluffles. I loved him. He was too good for this world.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of context. He was a fragment of a fallen god but the trickster element. So he went around tricking people, murdering people, stealing stuff. It was great. It was a really fun character.
He did just murder a random guy in a warehouse who was doing his job.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah. So, such a character. During some downtime, I believe he went on a robbing spree, robbed a couple of people, high class, low class. And one of the consequences of that was actually annoying a local crime lord. You messed with someone under his protection. And I feel like that consequence was an immediate effect, but not all consequences happen straight away. For example, maybe making a deal with the devil in Dungeons and Dragons can bring, quick and good rewards for the player. But there will always be the other side of the coin, the negative part. And that's the same thing that happens with murder hobos. If the murder hobo is going to go into a shop and kill a shopkeeper, someone's going to find the body sooner or later, and then there's going to be searches around the town. Players are probably going to be, they're going to be like, oh, adventurers can't come here anymore because you keep getting these people getting randomly murdered every time adventurers come by. There are consequences to the actions, but it's up to the DM how they want to present them and when.
That is true, and a good DM can filter consequences in slowly, and that probably will inevitably stop murder hobos. But I doubt people who are not like a directly evil group, and if you're running a directly evil campaign, then you should be prepared for them to kill these people immediately, and there should be some kind of immediate consequence. But if they're not an evil group, then it will take a few sessions for them to get to the point where they kind of think, screw it, let's kill this guy, let's murder him.
I actually have played with a group of people who were playing all evil characters. At the time of making the campaign, I wasn't aware they were all evil. Like, they came to me individually like, oh, this is my character's story. I was like, wait, what's your alignment? Evil, 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 evil. Even one player that stated they were neutral, chaotic neutral, ended up becoming evil just because
of being around 5 other evildoers. Yeah.
Yeah, and the first sign of this was they were sent on a diplomatic mission to acquire an artifact that had been stolen from the local town from some lizard people, and it started off with some negotiation. And when they realized that the negotiations weren't going the way they wanted, because only one person could actually speak Draconic, and that was the one person that didn't have very high charisma, they went, screw it, and bombed the entire village with fireballs. I even put tokens on the map to represent children and women running away. They aimed at specifically those groups.
Oh my god.
And the consequence of that, the party doesn't even get to experience, because they moved away from this entire island. What's happening in the world right now is that there is essentially a reenactment of a fantasy Vietnam on that island between the lizard people and the highly advanced townspeople. That is a consequence that they may not suffer now, but if they ever go back to the island, if anyone goes back to the island, they will realize, oh, we messed up here, and they may suffer at then and there.
So essentially what you're saying is that there is kind of an emergent campaign as a result of that negative action. So you were kind of saying there that murder hoboing, that kind of extreme branch of murder hoboing, essentially has led to this amazing campaign that they're having currently. Them killing and leaving has essentially left it so that there's huge consequences in the world, and then later on they'll come back and they'll face those consequences.
It's highly possible, yes.
Yeah. And personally, I have a character, probably my backup character, Ronan Sabazi, is someone who is a mercenary who's currently fighting in that war. So the result of that murder hoboing has actually led to, not only benefits and characters and interesting ideas in their own campaign, but also in other campaigns run by the same DM.
So, for context, for those who don't know, when I run D&D sessions, I have a homebrew world, and when I play with different parties, I always have them set in the same world. So one party's actions could actually affect another party's without them even knowing. Something I personally think is entertaining and mixes things up. But yes, exactly. Because of the actions of another party of people you've never met, you now have a character that has an epic backstory, and probably a very traumatizing one as well.
And a unique kind of resulting playstyle, but that's just my own amazing ability to create characters.
Yes.
Yeah. The guy who's played a little dog for half the campaign. But yeah, I think that just proves my point. I think that murder hoboing is an acceptable playstyle, because as long as there is a consequence to the world, that's been fun. And are they enjoying their campaign?
The players have been enjoying their campaign, yes. But at the time of everything happening, me as a DM, I didn't feel that same enjoyment. I felt almost like a terror for the place I'd created. I had this whole thing planned out with diplomacy and the lizard folk maybe at some point becoming an asset to the party, but I had to end up throwing all that away because of the murder thing. Like, I, as a DM, didn't feel great, but I then turned that into something that I could work with.
To a degree, you of course have to mention that murder hoboing inherently is quite bad for a DM, and I will concede that point, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
If a DM has made this amazing campaign based around these awesome characters, being good and helping out, then that's of course very bad, because we don't want DMs to have a bad time DMing, because otherwise they just stop running sessions. However, if a DM is preparing their sessions in one big block, or is refusing to let the actions of the campaign and the preferred playstyle of the players dictate the campaign, then they are a bad DM, and they need to learn from that stuff. So, for example, your campaign that we're just talking about, what you did was you then took the actions of the campaign and the actions of the players, and you made a whole new story. It's an emergent campaign. These kind of things that video games are struggling to do even now. It's a kind of dynamic battling between the DM and the players. They're a force of evil, and he is a force of good and reformation. And you could even repurpose some of the aspects, because if you thought there was going to be a big confrontation with, let's say, a vast evil necromancer, because that's kind of a Choltian kind of vibe. The place.
Yeah. The island that we were referring to is heavily based off of Chult.
Yeah, so maybe the lizard folk, in a kind of desperate plea to find the people who have murdered their friends, resort to calling upon a vast evil necromancer to hunt them down. And therefore you can use those same assets, and it's learning the adaptability that a DM needs to have to be a good DM and to have fun interactions with their players. And that is, again, resulting from murder hoboing. And so to kind of counteract that, you of course do need to not plan your sessions in bulk. But actually that's a good thing. If you plan 1-2 sessions ahead and allow the kind of meanderings of the players to lead to things, that's fun, man. That's great. That's how you should be playing. Do you not agree?
Yes, that is a great way. But I also do believe in the bulk preparing as a DM, but I think that's a topic for a different day.
I mean, do you want to go into that a little bit? Just the cliff notes of defense, because I'm very much stringently thinking that you need to adapt to players because D&D is so wild and so random. You know, if you planned a whole story arc for heck, and then heck dies, you know, then you've done a lot of work for nothing.
Nothing is ever truly thrown away. That's the thing about DMs. When you prepare a block to present to your players, nothing you do there is completely wasted. Maybe it's something you can use in the future. But yes, I do believe in adaptive DM. So I very much, when I plan out stuff, I have, let's say I have about 5 sessions planned out, but I don't have them meticulously planned out. I have like skeletons, and I use these skeletons for the players to intertwine it. You know, they are the muscle. My story is the skeleton, they are the muscle, we make the person from it. And I mean, at the moment in time, as this conversation is going on, I have the next like 6 sessions planned out for our campaign. Like, I know what's going to happen in the next 6 sessions if things go in a particular way. But if they also go in another direction, I know what's going to happen there because I planned it.
When I say this, I don't mean to say that you are a bad DM. I actually think you're a very, very, very good DM.
I don't take any offense to any comments towards DMs.
Like, yeah, I mean, so George is of course my DM, and I'm basically the backup DM. So if he's out, I'll run a one shot because I've got a few one shots in the tank.
I feel like if you are playing a murder hobo as a player, my question is this an issue with the world, or is this an issue with you? Like, do you have trouble making characters that you want to be invested in, or is this because you just see D&D sessions as a time to like break loose? And if so, is this the place to do it?
I would argue it is. You know, it's the freedom of the fun of D&D. You know, someone small and weak can play a 200 health barbarian that can like cleave an entire group of enemies in one hit. And in that same sense, it's a power fantasy. And in that same sense, you can have someone who is a perfectly normal person kind of finding fun in being this kind of arch evil, this kind of murderous, wild character. You know, it's a difference from their own sort of realities. You know, conventional wisdom might dictate that an evil player is bad, but if you can still feel engaged with the consequences. It's again going back to this kind of thing of emergent gameplay. You can enjoy killing the shopkeeper and then having the town guard come after you, and then you enjoy the escalation of that to, you know, maybe even invading the kingdom because you
it's the GTA effect.
It's the GTA effect. We are coining that.
You know, you go onto GTA, you don't just do the story, you go to a random pedestrian on the street and you hit them with a bag. Why? No particular reason, you just felt like doing it at that time and moment.
That is why murder hoboing is a totally good thing.
But at the same time, imagine the effect on other players at the table, you know? You're one person in a group of like 6 others. What happens when you walk down the street and the murder hobo goes, I'm just gonna beat that guy up? The other party's not gonna be like, oh, we're gonna help you out. They're gonna be like, the hell are you doing? Just beat up that old man.
No, the fatal flaw in my argument. Oh, the enjoyment of players.
Other people. Like, a lot of players can feel like if there is a murder hobo in their party, their connection to the story that the DM is making is pulled away because of the antics of someone else going, I'm just going to murder this important NPC because they called me a flabberdacker, and I didn't like that.
That's a very offensive term from where I'm from. Actually, I'll have you know. Actually, a flabberdacker is a sort of evil word. I don't know. But again, like I said, this is the fatal flaw in my argument. If, for instance, you are one player. So let me bring it to a personal example. The group that we're playing with now, like the kind of good campaign that we're running, they really love their characters, and their characters are, for the most part, good,
or at least lawful.
Whereas I think personally I'd have the most fun in a kind of weird murder hobo campaign, but actually taking that kind of step back and reserving myself a little bit more has been great fun. I've had an amazing time. So, I know I'm arguing against my own point, but in that sense, murder hoboing isn't justified if it's infringing on the health and the enjoyment of other players.
Maybe this is something to bring up with, as a neutral player, maybe it's something to bring up with your DM, like in situations where oh, okay, it's great and all that I get to be here and be my player. Maybe ask your DM, hey, next time you go into a combat and one of your monsters has a charm ability, can I just fail it and just go ham on the other players for a little bit, just to get that release in a combat situation? Because this is something that a lot of monsters have. Succubus, incubus, green dragons, when you're fighting them in their lair, can mind control players and NPCs to fight for them. And I had a situation where I had a party fighting a young green dragon, and one of the players got mind control, and instead of going oh no, I really didn't want this to happen, they went full in for it. They went, I am going to enjoy, because they were someone who personally liked a lot of PvP, and they went full in. They went, okay, I've got my character ready and I'm gonna attack them. I'm not gonna be mean and be oh, I'm gonna focus you. They just played like they would have played their normal character against a mob, but they were fighting their friends, and that was enjoyable for them. That character penultimately died, but that's due to the dragon's anger getting the better of it and going, you're useless, and then killed him. Yeah.
So, all right, now for the kind of closing statements. I'd just like to say that murder hoboing is fun. Chaotic characters can be out there, and they can, for one, lead to the players enjoying the kind of freedom from real world norms, and two, it can just be a way of providing rapid, expansive gameplay, emergent gameplay, where the DM and the players are constantly in this battle where one is trying to kill the other, one is trying to win out over the kind of wildness of the characters versus the control of the DM. And that can lead to a really interesting dynamic, as you said yourself with your Lizard Folk campaign.
Good points. But in my opinion, I believe murder hoboing to be terrible in all instances. And I think it's bad for players, and I think it's bad for them to be done against DMs. And chaotic is a alignment in Dungeons and Dragons. You shouldn't, not be a chaotic character, but I feel like you can be a chaotic character without being completely murderous. Chaotic can go from, I'm going to save this child from a burning building, to I'm going to push that man into a burning building. That man being evil, not necessarily good. But that's chaotic. I don't think chaotic should necessarily be evil. And I feel like just murder hobos in Dungeons and Dragons, it's a term that's, created by the D&D community. And I feel that I think I see less of them nowadays.
Yeah, people more are relating to the kind of the fun role-playing aspects rather than the kind of power fantasy aspect.
But at the same time, they are still present in games, and I feel like they can really pull away from stories. I once ran a session, I wanted to run a whole long series of sessions, but due to murder hoboing in those sessions, I ended up having to say, nope, I can't run this campaign anymore. It just doesn't feel good for me to run, and yeah. So I feel like murder hoboing can lead to the end of campaigns, which is a bad thing.
George, what do you think the best point that I made was?
I think the best point that you made was the reasons why people might become murder hobos. Maybe from the not enough work coming from the DM's side, or maybe it's because of real life problems, and this is a way for them to release their pent up issues. And I think that was, as someone who has gone into games like GTA to release such stress, I can understand that.
And for me, the point you said about the sort of health and well-being of a DM, I think is such a sort of valid point, which I hadn't even really thought of, because I was kind of coming at this from a kind of almost antagonistic view, the kind of if the players aren't engaged with the world, it's the fault of the DM. If the players want to do this, they should be able to. So hearing the kind of other side of it makes a lot of sense. All right, well, it's been very fun. Thank you for watching. My name is Jasper. Follow me on Instagram at Jasper, and buy my magazine, The Apiary, coming out this or possibly next year, depending on the sort of pandemic. And George, anything for you?
I'm George, and you can now follow me on Twitter at _Cremone. And just follow me there, say hey. I'm up to talk D&D whenever. I don't really post things, but I'm up to have a good talk.
Thank you very much.
And as always, have fun with the games that you play.